Good morning. Happy New Year. Merry Christmas. Uh, whatever other new holidays that might exist that I'm not aware of. You can't see this, but it's normal. It's not what you're going to think it might be, so it's just regular. It's kind of interesting. It's a funny word, this term architect. We have definitions for what it means. To build, to design, create. Not really sure which one anybody ever is. You can't really know that. But to build isn't always to create. That is to say that building is the actual construction, the physical process, the application of a tool. Sometimes the building, you can say, is done in the mind. And now we get into the ethereal questions of where the thing to build came from. There's suggestion that people should document, to journal, to record. Yeah, if you like that. But there's a compelling nuisance, I guess. I find it compelling, and that is to say that the universe is itself the record. To externalize and record is, as I'm doing now, irony. This shape exists. It's always existed. It's never not existed. It's simply being presented now. It is becoming visible. It's arriving, or by this point, it has arrived into your linear perception of reality. This is a record. It's the language of the universe, so that makes this interaction the journal entry. There's a quote you can say. I don't remember the specific citation because I'm not up there all the way on my memory, but when two or more are gathered, I am present, is the quote. Again, I don't remember the citation, but it is a biblical reference, so the nature of the statement is such that when two or more individuals are enjoined, let's say, in conversation or proximity or through this medium that we are experiencing right now, this video, he, it, she, they, God, whatever word you want to use, the universe is present. It's an ironic statement too, I think, because even if there were not two people present together, he is still there. Thus we arrive at an interesting question of what some might call destiny or predestiny, or the question of whether or not the future is preset, to say that all choices are irrelevant and nothing matters. You can go the nihilistic route and say that nothing matters, everything has no point or purpose whatsoever. It's all meaningless, it has no function. And consequently, we shouldn't care about it. But the alternative, this is the medicinal solution, if you want to call it that, is absurdism. Everything's predetermined. There is no potential future. Everything exists already that's going to exist or whatever. Absurdism suggests that maybe there's no point, that nothing exists. And so the consequence of that, instead of suggesting that we shouldn't care about it, is that because of the non-existence of reasoning, we should care about it. We should care about it more. I think this is really perfectly exemplified in that movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once. That there are endless realities. Which one you so choose to inhabit, of course, is up to the decisions and choices that you make in the present now, this moment now. And you could make an argument within the framework of either of those that what they call quantum suicide, it's a thought experiment, has application. Put simply, whenever an atom or particle ceases to exist in one reality, or has that potential to cease, that two realities emerge, one where it ceases and another one where it did not. And so if you put this in an experiment, every time you check the box for Schrodinger's cat and he's still alive, then the quantum suicide has failed, or in some perspectives it has succeeded. There's a movie, I can't remember the name of it now, it escapes me, but I gotta look it up. The movie discusses this notion of quantum suicide, and it utilizes an interesting story about time travel and connections. I believe it's called Paradox, but I'm going to look up the correct one now while I'm talking. I don't think it's called Paradox. Oh, dang it. There's a reveal that I don't want to say just yet, not until I have the name of the film. Oh, this is going to drive me nuts. Let me pause here until I find it and I'll come right back, but I apologize that the interruption is going to change the dots here, so hang on. We're back. So the film is called Paradox, released in 2016. Go watch it. It should be free, I think, on maybe YouTube, or I'm not even sure of all the resources where it would be, but it's high level. It's watered down for most audiences, but the premise of the film, the way that I've come to understand it at least, is the gentleman imagines or perhaps hallucinates an alternate reality. And in the moment that he has to make a decision, the entire film is one choice. And the very ending scene was the other. And I think it's a good reflection of what happens when we experience reality. We potentially have deja vu as a crux for that. I have personally experienced a sort of pre-deja vu where I dream or I have an imagination about something, and could be months, sometimes years later, I walk through, I end up in the moment of vision that I had before. And I've always thought that deja vu was like a checkpoint. Like, if you're playing a video game, you get to a checkpoint, or you finish some chapter of the story and you continue from someplace else. But that the deja vu is an indication of either a failed choice being reset or a successful choice that has been made, something along those lines. And potentially it could be both. And obviously we're getting really weird philosophy at this point, right? But we're entitled to our beliefs. You'll have to mind another one of these while we chat today. It's the new year, so I'm allowed. So when it comes to being an architect, a foundational piece of reality, we are the pivots, each of us. We have our own. Everything from the perspective of your consciousness experiencing the reality outside is your architecture. We produce, generate, create, fabricate, realize our own truth, our own realities, our own path through time and space. And I don't know where my little orbs went, but hopefully they'll come back. There they are. Every soul, I think is a fair word, transits the eternity, the ether of the universe, the matrix of the universe we transit through. We're not a guest, we are not passersby, we are not uninvited. It is yours. It is the essence that is experiencing's own personal discovery of the universe. So what then of destiny, choice? How do we navigate what we want or what we don't want? And I think some of that can be easily described through like video game mechanics, right? When you load up a new game, you say new game and then name your character. In this case, some of these things are pre-assigned, but you're more than welcome later to change the file name, so to speak. You play the tutorial, you graduate, and you play the main story missions. The journey in some video games is absolutely curated. Not as a consequence of any choices that you make, it's just by the nature of design of the video game. And some viewpoints of reality hold that this is the path that they take through life. They're not wrong, but they're not right either. It's one path, one play type, one playthrough style, one video game type, one story. We know that there are about 8 billion people in the world today, probably in the neighborhood of who have ever existed. I would throw a huge number out there, 100 billion, could be more, could be less. I don't know the facts. So at a minimum, we know at least that there's 8 billion stories, 8 billion playthroughs. And where you see this most impactful in video games are things like No Man's Sky with procedurally generated worlds. But it's one big map. All possible choices exist, but your playthrough is unique to you. And you do have a chance encounter with other players in a video game like that. Other other story types, other video game models would be things like Minecraft, also procedurally generated world, infinite landscape, forever. And it's never the same. Each map is different as well, so you have an infinite plane on which you can play, but you also have an infinite variety of these maps to choose from. Some players like to replay others' maps, learn from them. The thing with procedural generation is patterns. There's a rhythm to the generation of these. You'll notice the same creature type, not the same creature, the same creature type. You'll notice the same plant, the same dirt block, the same village arrangement, the same villager types in the same villager arrangement. If we go back to No Man's Sky, you'll notice similar planets with similar atmospheres, and this is the pattern. For lack of a better word, it's the procedure. But each player's playthrough is unique. The decisions you make as the player dictate the outcome of the game. You can choose to enjoy the surrounding environment and just live out the duration of your playthrough in that area, or you can explore, you can build, you can deconstruct. So, was it predetermined? Well, mechanically speaking, yes. And where I'm differentiating here is between what's available and what's experienced. We consciously experience a unique playthrough. The playthrough has predetermined variables that meant that it existed before. But because of this quantum suicide differential of decisions, you will never have an awareness of the outcome. And that's the fun. Hindsight's always 20/20 because that path before was set. This shape can be duplicated, provided, of course, all of the circumstances that led up to its generation are recreated precisely. And thus, every position of every atom in existence forever, for all of time and space, can be mapped. Thus, the universe is the logbook. the universe is the journal, the outcome in reality, in space, is preset. So how do we choose what we want? I'm not aware of what I can say to wrangle this shape in right now. I know that if I say nothing, it will balance itself out. So creating, being an architect, requires knowledge of how to manipulate a system in chaos like this in such a way so that it can impact the things around it in a specific way. Knowing, for example, where to place the weight to create the leverage that you need when you want to balance something. If I know that putting 2 pounds here will balance my scale, so it starts here and then it balances, then I understand the system. It's the same thing with architecting a universe. You need to understand and listen to the reality of the world around you, to adhere to its patterns, to follow its waves when it's appropriate, to combat those same waves when it's appropriate, to the outcome that you are electing to experience. My goal is to release the tension in here and put it somewhere else, because I'm tired of holding all of it in. I have other objectives. To whom I am speaking, I am sure that you understand some of what I'm saying, and you balance that for me in a way that I haven't yet put a name to it. And from that perspective, I can definitively say that you were right. There is creation, there is this need to produce, to solve for something else. And I think that's where, when you combine these things, the proposition that in an infinitely generated world, vis-a-vis No Man's Sky, the chances of running into someone else are low, but never zero. I've come across other players' bases numerous times in the game, and that's an interesting perspective to take, because as we nearer the center of whatever this is, the likelihood of those encounters would naturally go up. The window of random chance gets smaller, or by other perspectives you can say it gets larger. Chance encounter percentage goes up, meaning you're more likely to encounter someone else. So the longer that you've been working towards a particular outcome, the more likely you are to arrive. When those random chances are high enough to encounter, we'll call it player 2. If that's the desired outcome, people can opt in or opt out. In some cases, you have no choices to opt in or opt out. You have preset your destiny to arrive at a point where that encounter was mandatory. It was required. Maybe for you, maybe for them, maybe for someone else. So we are all influenced by all of these interactions consistently all of that time, and being hermetic, being shut off, allows one to understand the influences that they would have and the influences of others onto themselves. It's the equivalent of elevating from an understanding of a 2D reality into the comprehension of the third. So not everything just has length and width anymore, it also has height. It's a new perspective. This shape is a flat two-dimensional representation of a three-dimensional construct, which itself is born in a higher dimension which was watered down to be comprehensible for the 3D mind. It's one example. So, point space-time, we start at 0 for time, then we add 1, 2, and 3 dimensions, where we arrive at now. And the shape that you might see is a cube. Some people imagine things like a pyramid, which is fair. And with something like 8D quasi-crystal, or whatever the current running name for it is, it's a collection of those in a higher dimensional space, of course, broadcast downwards in shadows through all of the lower dimensions until such a point that we arrive at the physical reality that we experience now, which we understand to be external to the self that we know as us, we, the I of the sentence. What do we do with that information? I can't certainly see those higher dimensions, but when you think in dimensions, it might help understand or comprehend. Navigating that's of course its own challenge. Being tethered to it is one thing, but understanding where the tether is pulling or where you can pull that same tether is important as well. Being anchor and kite, for example, the kite sometimes cannot have enough strength of wind to pull the anchor. But if the tether is strong enough, a strong enough wind on the kite can move the anchor. The anchor, on the other hand, has the same influence in reverse to the kite, but it has less resistance, and it has more resistance to things like wind. So the anchor is as solid as it can be. It's unlikely that a wind that would blow the kite strong enough to move the anchor would be itself not strong enough to naturally move the anchor. So what of the tether? How does the tether come into existence? Kites and anchors don't often find themselves, in nature connected, much less so that kites and anchors are not natural to nature, at least as we understand the trees and grass version of nature to be. But when we speak of nature, we speak of reality, not of earthly biomechanics, right? So an influence that might be strong enough to hit one and change its path may not be strong enough to move both. And things that affect the anchor might not affect the kite. So remember, the anchor is on the ground. The ground is subject to water, to conditions of environment like dirt and wind. Thus, erosion can find itself present. Things like rust will manifest. Things the kite would not normally be affected by. And the tether comes about when these two items discover a need to be in relation, to be in each other's orbit, to arrive at a consensus that the tether is required. The strength of the tether then is based on the collective requirement of both the kite and the anchor, but also of those things surrounding kites and anchors that require the kites and anchors to be present, or helpful, or not helpful. So the tether is the shortcut between player 1 and player 2 in No Man's Sky. If I found a base of an alternative player 2 somewhere out on a planet, and I want it to return there. The game makes it pretty easy to, mark a favorite on the map or something and return to it. Meeting the player is completely independent, of course, of their base, but you can quote-unquote add friend, and now the tether, which was previously super weak, is stronger. But you still require both players to be, we'll say, online in order for them to chat, to communicate. They can remotely, not live presence anyway, not live connection, they can help each other build each other's bases if permitted. So there's this mutual understanding that's a requirement. Now there has to be a measurable amount of trust in order for this to work. Each of these dots is tethered to the other dot by the length of the word of the dot prior. There's a trust between them. Sometimes there's a need for belief, or maybe disbelief, to have factual evidence to determine through, I guess it would be deductive reasoning perhaps. You need a method to show that 1 + 1 = 2. And it's kind of funny there. The other day, I told a coworker that I think there's no such thing as imaginary numbers. In general math, just to recap, imaginary numbers come about when you try to take the square root of a negative number. Consequently, though, remember that in most mathematics anyway, today, we use base 10, 0 through 9, 10 digits, and then we cycle through, right? 0 through 9, 10 through 19, 20 through 29, always in groups of 10. And then that first tens digit recycles over again. But we always arbitrate a 0 point somewhere. We say this is 0. 0 is the middle of, upper positives and lower negatives. But it's, for lack of a better word, it's a spectrum, right? You can move the 0 somewhere else. And I think that's why no negative numbers actually exist, that instead of square rooting a negative number, you're technically just square rooting the positive number. Hence the, system that goes around that just says I, because it's the same square root, but now you're in this imaginary territory. So if you can imagine an X plot graph, X, Y, and Z plot graph or whatever, where there's, upper and lower quadrants, the negative number would normally be below the line as a negative. But all you have to do, and what I'm saying, is just move that axis line down. So where you would say square root of -1, if adjusted, as they might say, calibrated. Let's say you want to calibrate it 2 places. So you go from -1 to a +1 and everybody's happy. Or you can say -1 + 1 to 0, square root of 0. But in doing so, the fundamental perspective of mathematics might, you would think, change, but it really doesn't. It's equitable to a statement that was made in Star Wars, or Star Trek, excuse me, where the teleportation requirements meant that you had to think of space as the thing that was moving instead of the person, right? So the person now becomes the 0, because otherwise he was trying to encapsulate the entirety of space and time to try and find one person, when instead he should just look from the person back to the ship. The math changes, but it's the same reality. So imaginary numbers, negative numbers, or just a matter of perspective. And I think for the subject matter today, I'll leave that there. I noticed your sign-off was different today when I watched, so not sure what's going on there, but I hope you're okay. I hope any incidences that might have happened recently are not too bad. Yeah, I'll leave that there. I'm gonna try and be quiet for a second and let this noise thing do its thing.